This is Kits and Wagers. I'm Adam Zdroik, joined by Chris Owen. We're talking futures in the Premier League ahead of the 2023-24 season. Chris has been grinding Liverpool preseason matches for the past few weeks. He's in the middle of an FPL draft as we speak. Poor timing on his draft's part. But Chris, what's up? Happy summer. How's it going over there?
Adam, an absolute pleasure. We had a 2-month, 3-month break here without any podcast. So it did feel like there was a big absence in my life of, either A, waking up nice and early to record a podcast on a Thursday, or B, doing a podcast after work on any given Wednesday or Thursday evening. So it's nice to be back here. I couldn't help but notice you're rocking a super special Ballard FC kit there. And if you're watching here on YouTube with Adam and I, we're actually both rocking our Ballard FC kits. They're fresh off winning the USL 2 national championship.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, they were an absolute wagon this season. I actually caught quite a few games.
They get promoted or what?
I don't think USL is in that promotion quite yet, promotion relegation quite yet. But they actually had a bunch of really good players. They had this one kid from Penn who was an All-American, a couple other D1 studs. So
Freddie Adu.
Yeah, Freddie Adu is, the ghost of Freddie Adu might have been on the team too. But no, it's good to be back. We Adam and I had a fan track season long draft last night. We're in the middle of a slow draft with a bunch of RotoWire colleagues too. That is, kind of been at a glacial pace today. Hoping to finish that up before the season starts Friday, and then I am somehow got my signals mixed up here, but I'm in the middle of an FPL draft. We're doing what we can here, and should be. I'm excited to talk about the future of the Premier League and specifically the 23-24 season. What's new with you? What's going on with you?
I just did some research here. USL 2, the playoffs. This is a massive bracket. They beat Lionsbridge FC in the final. Man, there's a lot of soccer that we just don't know happens under our watch here. But USL 2, I don't believe promotion is happening though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a busy summer since we last talked. I now am a father. I have a child. I'm the father to a child. Yes, that is correct. So is that going to help my bets? I don't know. I just wrote my first article of the season. Oh, I do have a futures article up. I guess I'll say RotoWire Soccer, go here. We got some bets up, some Spain, Netherlands. We got a nice run through here by one of our writers. Check that out. We got futures bets as well as what I was mentioning. But I just started my Gameweek 1 article, and I was like, there's no way that I can repeat what I did last season. So if you don't want to follow these, it's not going to be as good as last season. Then don't follow them. I'll just tell everyone that numbers will not be the same. I think on Kits and Wagers, I was maybe up 3,000 or something like that. As a show, we were, as a show, maybe above 4,000 in the 5,000 range. So otherwise, I had a child, I had a baby. She's now just over 2 months old. So that's kind of crazy. But RotoWire Soccer is still kicking strong, as you can see on the top news part here on RotoWire. A lot of stuff is going on. The seasons are about to start. We're 2 days away from a couple of leagues starting, including the Premier League. But we have some, promoted teams making moves at the last minute. We got Big Ross Barkley back in the Premier League. An interesting move there from Luton Town.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much you know about these promoted teams, but should we just start getting into talking about the Premier League here?
I think we should. First and foremost, though, congrats on becoming a father. Luckily, you won a ton of money on corners bets last year that you can put towards diapers. So that's a huge development for you, and I expect future success both for yourself and for your family. So let's kick it off without further ado.
Without further ado, so we got Manchester City minus 125 to get in, but let's start with relegation, because relegation I think is more fun to talk about than Manchester City. So let's talk about some of these new teams here. And to be relegated, we have a combination of DraftKings and FanDuel tonight. FanDuel, Chris has some better bets, better odds over at FanDuel. I've used a lot of DraftKings, so it's been So what we're talking about will be between DraftKings and FanDuel. But to be relegated, I have right here Luton Town minus 300. These are for the promoted teams. I'm looking through the list here. Got to find a ways to get to Burnley, but Sheffield United are next up at minus 175, and then Burnley are plus 350. Some interesting odds. We have Nottingham Forest as third most likely to drop at plus 225. Wolverhampton, we'll talk about Wolverhampton a little bit, who just sacked their manager and just signed Gary O'Neill, who closed last season as Bournemouth's manager. Wolverhampton are plus 250 to drop down. So, Chris, for the promoted teams, for any of those teams near the bottom, what team is most intriguing to you here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Luton Town, they come as a huge surprise. I mean, last season in the playoff, obviously, their stadium not even quite up to the standards of the Premier League. So I think they won't be able to play any home matches for a bit to kick off the season while they're upgrading it to meet whatever I forgot what specifically the standards are. So that's kind of tough, especially when you're like a new team. You're trying to get a couple home matches right off the rip and have that home support behind you, but. I think they're going to have a tough time of it. I mean, I think everyone would say that. Sheffield United, they've been up recently, so they know what it takes, and obviously didn't last very long, but they know what it takes in the Premier League. And then I just think Burnley, we saw them in the Premier League for quite a while. Obviously dropped back down. They've got a pretty good team. They're playing a much different style than they did under Sean Dyche when he was there. Company's got them playing a bit more on the front foot. I think they've acquired some pretty good players, and I they're plus 350. I feel like they have a really good chance to stay up. For me, I'm really concerned with Wolverhampton. You mentioned that they sacked their manager. Right, we're 6 days about to before the season started. That's really concerning. Also, I think the underlying factor of that is that they have some financial issues with their ownership. They got to bring in a new manager. They got some financial issues. That's a lack of players coming in, maybe more players going out than they would have liked to prop up the club. I would be really concerned with Wolverhampton, to start off the season, and I would not be surprised. I think you can get them at I forgot what we had, relegation at plus 230. I saw.
I got plus 250.
Okay, yeah, DraftKings has plus 250, so that's something I would kind of hop on for the relegation. I think otherwise you're not getting a ton of value on Burnley. They're plus 350, and then the other two just Burnley, I feel like will stay up, and then the other two, you're not getting a ton of value. I think the value's on Wolverhampton, just given that their situation is kind of up in the air right now, and does not seem very solid when you just sack your manager right before the start of the season.
Yeah, I was looking at this. This was yesterday. This was Tuesday. I was looking for bets to make for the show, and pretty much as soon as I spotted Wolverhampton, the news came out that Lopetegui was gone. This has been kind of in the works for a couple weeks. He came out a couple weeks ago and was just like he's kind of fed up that they weren't buying anyone. I mean, we're looking at their depth chart right now, and they added Matt Doherty back to their team. They lost Ruben Neves, Diego Costa. Okay, they're getting Sasa Kalajdzic, a forward back. He's from Stuttgart. He tore his ACL, so he's out all last season. But I mean, outside of getting Kalajdzic back from injury, there's not a ton that they added, or there's not really anything outside of Doherty that they added. So that was kind of what Lopetegui was complaining about. So, I mean, it's kind of some of the same guys here, but new manager and Lopetegui kind of turned them around a little bit. One of the teams I'm kind of looking at here, what I'm going to be looking at maybe in the next 48, 36 hours here to bet, just something that's catching my eye. We got Crystal Palace at plus 600 to be relegated. Just another team that really hasn't made a ton of moves. If you look at their team, they lost Zaha. Olise is likely going to be gone, but I mean their attack is kind of the same without Zaha here. So you take away two of their best players. Eze is now their guy. It seems like they added Jefferson Lerma, okay, defensive midfielder. They're going to add Lewis Hall from Chelsea, it seems like, on loan. So I guess, okay, another midfielder, maybe fullback kind of thing. But that's kind of it for them. And they were already kind of a team that was battling relegation last season until, they got a bit of a revival under Hodgson there late in the season. But What do you think about this Crystal Palace team? Guaita is also gone. He already said he doesn't want to play for Crystal Palace again. So what do you think about this team just without – we've seen Zaha here for so many years.
Yeah.
Take away him and probably Olise, who was arguably their best player last season.
Yeah.
So what do we make of this team here?
I mean, I feel like Eze is their, best player on the roster. Elise was also scouted, but it sounds like he might be moving on for, the right reasons, going to a new club potentially. But yeah, they are lacking talent up and down. I mean, they do have a decent back line but decent center backs that they can get away with. Nathaniel Klein, how is he still on a Premier League roster? That's my question. Will Hughes, he's bounced around each, whether about 10 different championship and EPL teams. So, yeah, I mean, looking at it just as a strictly player perspective, not a ton of talent. And if they lose Elise, even worse. But yeah, it's weird to see Jordan Ayew just like number one option. And I feel like he's been plying his trade at Palace for so long. But yeah, I mean, another team that is certainly in a concerning period too. So yeah, a little concern there as well. But for me, if it was Palace or Wolverhampton, I'm leaning a little bit more on Wolverhampton to be relegated.
I'd agree. I just think that the odds here at plus 600 for
totally.
Crystal Palace for this team, it seems like if we're looking at the Premier League table, I think there's kind of a pretty, I don't know if safe is the correct word, but there's like a set split of top teams and bottom teams and maybe a couple in the middle. I'd say, so you got a top 9 with, according to the odds, Brighton and Aston Villa would be 8 and 9, I believe is what it is. And then in the middle, we have West Ham, Brentford, and Crystal Palace are sitting there. And then it's the other 8 teams. So it's kind of, I guess this is kind of where we're at in the Premier League, where the top of the Premier League, due to money, it's just going to keep separating itself a little more from these teams. I mean, we saw Nottingham Forest add 20 players or whatever last season. It barely worked, but you're just not going to get that from these smaller teams. They're going to be adding 1, 2, 3, however many pieces. They're not going to be big names, and fan bases are going to be upset. Managers are going to be upset, like Lopetegui. I mean, his last season, Brendan Rodgers was upset about what was going on at Leicester City, and then we saw what happened with them. So I just think, plus 600 odds for a team like Crystal Palace, given their situation here, I think they should almost be in the same boat as a lot of these teams, like Everton plus 300, Fulham plus 400, Burnley even plus 350. What do you think about Burnley here? So a lot of people, so promoted teams, the ones that usually have more success in the Premier League right away are ones who are more defensive. They play a little safer. This is kind of what we get with Sheffield United. I believe they stayed up, was it 2-3 years ago in their first season back, and then they got relegated in the following year. But this Burnley team under Vincent Kompany, they don't really play like that. They play a bit more attacking, and they play with a bit more possession. So, and now we look at their team here.
Yeah,
I mean,
can we just two things about Burnley here? Can we just pour one out for Ashley Barnes? No longer on the Burnley roster.
He started. Who did he start for? Did he start for Norwich a couple days ago or over the weekend?
He moved to Norwich on a free transfer, but for so long felt like he was the toughest forward to watch in the Premier League. He was always shithousing or doing whatever he needed to do for Burnley, and I just want to pour one out for him. And then another guy who I just saw on RotoWire.com is moving on is Wout Weghorst. He's heading to Hoffenheim on loan. So yeah, they just lost. Looks like looking here at the depth chart, they have plenty of options up front. But I just had to chuckle a little bit, and when I saw that Ashley Barnes had gone to Norwich, but yeah, I'm going to butcher this, but Anas Zayaroui.
Yeah, Zayaroui.
Okay, thanks for picking me up when I'm down there. But yeah, I mean, so he's been going really early in season-long drafts. A lot of hype around him. So his hype started. I'll click into his profile. It started a lot in the World Cup a little bit. I guess he was only off the bench, but a lot of those Moroccan guys got a lot of hype during the World Cup. But yeah, he was. He eventually won a starting spot. As you can see, he joined Burnley December, right after the World Cup. I guess the World Cup is what got him the job there. But he came on late in the season, 7 goals, 5 assists for him. Yeah, I mean,
you mentioned Ashley Barnes, like Jay Rodriguez is still there. I think he's going to lose his spot to Zarauri Foster. They added M. Downey, Manuel Benson, super sub. They got Brune Larson on loan. I mean, you still got some of these guys here. It's like they added Nathan Redmond. Okay. They still got Gudmundsson, who's getting a lot of time. Brownhill. He was one of the few players that's still on their team that was actually getting time for him last time in the Premier League. But, I mean, they lost Nathan Tella from last season. He scored the most goals for them. But it's just like, I don't know if they did enough to be in the Premier League and to play the same style. It's almost like they have to change their style here, and we'll see what company does. But just a team like this where I'm not sure they actually improved their team from last season, and I think to myself, well, going back to last season, I think I kind of said the same thing about Bournemouth because they didn't really add anyone, and then they started adding guys maybe middle of the season over the winter transfer window, and then they started picking it up a little bit. They had a nice little run, conveniently under Wolverhampton manager Gary O'Neill, but. I mean, a lot of these bets here, it still feels wrong that Burnley are plus 350. I know how well they did last season, but it just feels wrong that they're plus 350. But then you have Everton at plus 300, Bournemouth at plus 300 to be relegated. It just seems like has Burnley earned the right to be plus 350 to be relegated with better odds or worse odds than some of these other teams? I don't think so.
You make a really good point there. One I hadn't really considered, but I mean. Maybe they're just like getting the bump because they scored 100 points in the championship last year.
Vincent Kompany bump.
Yeah, the Vincent Kompany bump, like different playing style or maybe, but I mean, we've seen that happen before. We've seen a championship team who plays like, good attacking style, like, look no further than Norwich's Daniel Farke's Norwich. When they came up, they scored a boatload of goals. They looked like they would continue that style, but they just got, they got shellacked week in and week out. And so, we'll see what you've given me more concern for Burnley than I had when we started this show. But I still think that they stay up.
Yeah. Daniel Farke just rinse repeat with a lot of these managers. I believe he's now managing Leeds United. So just, speaking of Gary O'Neill, now we got Daniel Farke. We got all these guys. It's just like, okay, you got fired from here. Okay. We want you over here. It's just all over the place kind of a thing. So, we'll see where Lopetegui goes next. I don't know if it's going to be in the Premier League, but he could be waiting for that next Premier League job. Maybe that's what it'll come to, something like that. Top of the table. Should we go bottom to top? Is that how it's done? Bottom to top?
Yeah, sure. I got a few bets to get out here before we, for this show here. But top of the table, give the fans what they want, I guess.
Give the fans what they want. Steve is asking City to repeat, Haaland to break his own record parlay. Can you actually bet Haaland to break his record? In
36. Can you bet an over 30, like a 36 and a half? Like
I'm seeing 29 and a half for
really?
For
yeah, I mean, if you think that, smash that over 29 and a half on Haaland. I think that's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'd say as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to get 30 plus. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Do you think otherwise?
30 goals. I mean, I think I was looking at this earlier, but you look at the last few seasons. We had obviously Haaland went over 30 goals last year. Then it was 22, 23 goals. Salah scored 32 in 17-18. Luis Suarez scored 31, and it's only happened 3 times in the last 10 years. Van Persie 11, 12. So 30 goals in the Premier League is, it's quite a bit. So I think we've seen 4 in the last 12 years. So I think Haaland, stays healthy. I think he does it, but it is a big ask.
Speaking of Haaland's team, Man City minus 125. Before we go here, I guess I always say in these future shows, if you're looking at a team and you want to look at their future schedule, I think you should, if you want to bet a team, look at their future schedule. If there's a bunch of difficult matches, if there's a bunch of easier matches, kind of take advantage of that. I was speaking of Crystal Palace plus 600. to be relegated. So their first match is at Sheffield United. That's a winnable spot, but it is on the road for a team that's back in the Premier League. Next match is against Arsenal, then at Brentford. And then, okay, Wolverhampton, Aston Villa. It's kind of off and on a little bit, but I think if you think that Crystal Palace don't get a win at Sheffield United, they're probably not going to beat Arsenal. They're probably not going to win at Brentford. I think you're going to lose the plus 600 odds to be relegated. So that's something I just keep an eye on. So if you want to, so for Manchester City, it's kind of the same thing. So they're minus 125. I remember talking about this pretty much every future show last season. I was like, okay, well, if they're going to, I guess Manchester City's a little different because they can pretty much beat anyone. But, you look at their schedule at Burnley, okay, home against Newcastle, at Sheffield United, home against Fulham, West Ham, Nottingham Forest, pretty easy schedule. So you could see from that, it's like, okay, they're going to win, 5 or 6 of their first 6 matches kind of a thing. So a month from now, a month and a half from now, it could be minus 150. It could be minus 175. And that's not even taking into account like what Arsenal do. So what are your thoughts here? Is it just going to be a 1-2 race, Manchester City against Arsenal, or someone else with a new manager gonna do something, or Jurgen Klopp, not a new manager, but a new midfield?
No, I think we're looking at another, Man City. It's 5 of 6 they've taken, is it? Yeah, I think so. It would be sweet if we saw a new winner like Arsenal. I really truly only think it's a 2-horse race between Man City and Arsenal this season. Arsenal have added some really key players. Declan Rice, look no further than that. Timber, I'm interested to see how he does. It sounds like he's quite versatile. I haven't really watched him a ton, but they've
started at left back in the Community Shield. Looked pretty good.
And it sounds like he can play maybe through the middle and even further up the wing too. So they've made some really good investments, and so Kai Havertz too. Look no further, a little bit of depth up top, which they really seem to be missing when they didn't have Gabriel Jesus as well. So they made 3 huge acquisitions there that I think really could bring them over the top. But let's be realists here. We've seen Man City win 5 of the last 6 Premier League titles. Why should we expect anything different? But if you're looking for a nice, fun value bet, go with that. What did I say? I think Arsenal's plus 450 to win it. You can get Man City, I think, at minus 125, which seems like pretty easy money if you really want to do it. But if you want to try to get a little more value. But yeah, I do kind of question the only potential chink in that City armor is they lost Ilkay Gundogan to Barcelona. It sounds like they're shopping around for a couple more players too. Paqueta from West Ham I saw earlier today, maybe.
Mitoma has been in there too.
Yeah. It sounds like Kyle Walker is going to stay. That was just a headline this week, so things change obviously, but that's a really good player to keep. And then obviously they added names escaping me, the center back from Red Bull Leipzig, which
Josko.
Gvardiol or whatever, and just the rich get richer there at center back, where they have Ake, Kanji could probably play through the middle, Walker, Ruben Diaz is an absolute brick, stops everything, and then I'm probably missed John Stones, who played a bit more holding mid, but I think they'll be fine, and I wouldn't be surprised. But and then we have Ozzy here in the comments. What's up with João Cancelo? I'm not really sure, but it sounds like he might be sticking around too. But
I think Pep hates him, so.
Yeah, I think he does too, although he's like a brilliant outside back. So, but with them playing 3 at the back, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But the only thing is just like maybe they need to add another midfielder, but also they have this guy named Calvin Phillips, who was previously a stud, who barely played last season. Maybe just needed a season to be kind of bedded in there.
Or he might not be a stud.
That's true too. Who knows? I think he gets a bit more playing time this season. But they that's the only thing, is like maybe they haven't really added that like premier center mid that they still kind of want to. But if they do, it's tough to argue against minus 125 for them to win their sixth title in the last 7 years. And then even outside of that, like Liverpool added 2 midfielders. They had about 6 outgoings. They still can't seem to. They had lost Fabinho lost their captain, and Henderson lost their vice captain. It just seems like, I mean, it's a tough offseason for them if they don't add another player here. I think they're going to be chasing a top 4 again. And then Chelsea, I am really interested in that project with Pochettino. I think they're playing for a top 4 to kind of recoup some of the money they've been spending on players. And then Newcastle, you think they stay in the top 4 again? I think a team who hasn't played in Europe in years, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle. They added Tonali from AC Milan, who is came with a big pedigree and a big price, and he'll help them. But I'm not, we'll see what happens with that.
Based on off what you said, you don't agree with the odds here. Liverpool are the 3rd biggest favorite, and they're minus 175 to finish in the top 4. So you don't like that at all. It's kind of what you're saying.
I'm kind of lacking confidence. I just saw they've put in 3 bids for Romeo Lavia from Southampton, and they just can't seem to meet 50 million pounds, which is kind of bogus, I guess. But I'm going off the fact that they need another center midfielder. They certainly need another center back. They did some good business to start, but they're lacking depth, and they without another player or two, I think they might struggle to get back in the Champions League. But it is a Jurgen Klopp project. He's shown he can keep them in there. So I think I'm maybe a bit pessimistic right now.
I mean, we've seen it a bit in preseason with Liverpool. They have the attackers. Their defense is just kind of nowhere to be seen. I think we were talking about in the Discord. It's like we're going to see a lot of 4-3, 3-2 matches because the defense just isn't there. We know TAA. I mean, they closed last season with him playing a little more in like kind of a midfield role, similar to what Man City was doing. But last few preseason matches, he's gone back to right back where he just doesn't really play defense. So you have that in there. Van Dijk seems to be getting worse by the year, along as he gets older here. So, and then, I mean, we look at the midfield. I mean, you mentioned the guys that are gone, the Fabinhos and these defensive midfielders that kind of have kept things together for the most part prior to last season, kept things together in the midfield. And now, Szoboszlai's not really a defensive midfielder. He's more attacking. McAllister, are you going to put all the pressure on McAllister to be, more the defensive guy? Probably not. Curtis Jones, okay. And then, I mean, you have Harvey Elliott. He's probably maybe won't even play in the midfield. We've seen Gakpo play in the midfield as well. So there are questions, as you said, Lavia. Maybe Lavia kind of gives them something, some.
There's another body, warm body in there,
Another body that's not going to focus on it's just not a guy who's just not going to care about like I need to score kind of a thing. I think Szoboszlai's over under is 7.5. If you bring Lavia in, his over under is going to be 1.5. So that's just kind of the difference in what they're bringing in. But I mean, this first match should be fun. Liverpool at Chelsea. We will be talking about this. We will go game by game, the same thing we did last season. So we'll be talking about 3 games later in the week. But yeah, as you mentioned about Chelsea, I'm escaping my mind of the defensive midfielder that they're going to bring in, but I believe they're going to bring in someone to play next to Enzo instead of Conor Gallagher. I've been doing too much stuff today. I forget who it is, but
I can't think of it either, and I feel like I've been pretty well. I mean, Chelsea, they put in a bid, 48 million pounds for Lavia today.
Okay.
So, I mean, they literally just did that. I saw earlier today, and Liverpool had been at like 46. Southampton are looking for 50. So they're really like hemming and hawing over 4 million pounds, which is
that's about right.
Really good for the supporters.
I guess they're probably still in the mix for Moises Caicedo.
Oh, right.
Yep. So he's in there as well. New manager Pochettino. We'll see how it goes. They've looked pretty solid in preseason, but it's preseason. And Cuckoo's out for a couple months. That's obviously not going to help. Tottenham, another talking point here. I mean, we could go team by team, really, just talking about whatever. But just in terms of these bets here. So you didn't like Liverpool minus 175. Who would you take for top 4? Which of these bets actually intrigues you? Because we got Newcastle and Chelsea at plus 150. We got Tottenham at plus 300. Brighton's plus 650. Aston Villa's plus 650. We haven't really mentioned Manchester United, but they're minus 150.
I have a bet in here. Manchester United to finish outside of top 4 is minus 135. I found that on FanDuel. I don't think they're going to make it into to the top 4 of the season. So that's one there. But I kind of love
Tyler Adams. Ozzy is helping us out. That was the guy I was thinking of. It looks
Oh.
like Chelsea are going to get Tyler Adams.
Really. God, my nightmare gets worse here. I would love Tyler Adams in a red shirt. My wet dream was Chelsea gets Lavia and then Liverpool swoops in for Casado, which would be great. But that's
good luck.
I'm just stuck in midfield purgatory here. But anyways, back to what we got to do here. I would say we haven't talked about Tottenham at all, but if I could get a bet in for a top 4 side here, it's got to be Chelsea plus 125. They got all the talent on that squad to do it, and they got a manager who knows how to get them there too. So I feel like that would be a pretty good bet. They obviously don't have any European things to commit to this competitions to commit to during the week, which is a huge boost with your team. You're not dealing with all the injuries. So that's where I'm at for a top 4 bet that I would really get behind.
Yeah, both Chelsea and Tottenham have that no lack of midweek competition kind of a thing to look forward to, which it's some kind of a detriment to some in terms of bringing people in. But when you're Chelsea and Tottenham, the players figure that you're going to eventually be playing in Champions League. I guess at least close to it, at least try to get. They have a better chance of getting to the Champions League, I guess I'll say.
Yeah.
But Tottenham. These two teams here. So Tottenham's manager formerly at Celtic, and there's this clip going around Twitter where they were just passing it in the back around Barcelona, and they got it. I don't know if it led to a goal, but they got it to the attacking third kind of thing. And it was like, this has never happened for Tottenham before, kind of a thing. So they still have some questions. Like Højbjerg may not be on the team anymore, and he may be gone. Looks like Udogi is going to be their left back. He's been starting there a bunch in the preseason. They got Van de Ven at center back. So I mean, you look at those teams and it's like, okay, look at this talent. They got new managers, so it's like, okay, plus 150 for Chelsea top 4, plus 300 for Tottenham top 4. It kind of makes sense. I believe I wrote about Aston Villa. I don't know if it must have been top 6 and not top 4, but I still think Aston Villa is decent as – I know you don't agree with me here, but just as an underdog, the question with like an Aston Villa and Brighton is when you get into these European competitions, you're not used to them. So, I mean, we look at a team like Brighton. They already lost McAllister. If they lose Casado, it's like, is Brighton going to be ready for these constant midweek matches kind of thing early in the season? Because, I mean, just the depth just really isn't there if you go through the roster. And I'd actually argue Aston Villa is a little deeper than Brighton because they've kind of been adding, key pieces here and there. Maybe they don't have an exact replacement for Ollie Watkins, but they got a pretty solid back line. They added Pau Torres, and they're getting Diego Carlos back from his ACL tear. So I think Villa are deep enough. We'll see if it helps them in terms of European competition, but Brighton we'll see. They got a lot of young guys, and maybe De Zerbi ball is going to be enough to get it may not matter if they rotate in European a little bit, and De Zerbi ball is just going to be enough to help them find some success in Europe too. Who knows? I
mean, they probably had the biggest addition of the offseason. They got James Milner for free.
Really I was like, did I forget someone?
No, they added his steel and his know-how and his veteran presence. But I mean, it's like I said, the same way that it's good for Chelsea. Not good for them, but the fact that they're not playing in European competition, it makes it they're preparing for the odd League Cup game or FA Cup game, but otherwise their focus is on getting back into that top 4 in the Premier League. It's a huge boost, when you think about injuries and all that good stuff. But on the other side of that, you have a team like Brighton who doesn't have that huge budget for players. They've added smartly in certain areas. They're trying like heck to keep Casado for the new endeavor here this season. And then on the same side of that is Aston Villa, who they've they've really made a couple. Three big additions. Pau Torres was a good addition. Musa Diaby, who I think will add a lot to their attack. I thought that same thing when they added Leon Bailey from I think he was at Leverkusen before too. So they kind of went back that well, and then they added Yuri Tillemans for free, which he's played in Champions League, Europa League, all that good stuff. So that he's a really good addition and certainly adds their depth. But when you get to playing, whatever it is, Tuesday, Wednesday, or I guess there'll be Thursday, and then you got a game Sunday, and you're going right back to it. You got a League Cup game, in the midweek, the next week, and you're dealing with injuries. I think it just is. You're bound to probably drop points, especially with this being the first European season for them in a long time.
Yeah.
I just think it might be tough for them.
Yeah, same with Newcastle. But let's get into some of our bets here. I got a graphic up for our bets. So if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, I got some bets up. So make it easier on everyone. We each have 6 bets apiece. I went heavy on a bunch of goal numbers here, but let's just go through them. So Chris sent me like 20 bets, and I grabbed 6. I grabbed 6 of them. I tried to get one of each category here. So let's talk about Wolverhampton first. We already talked about them a little bit, but Wolves will be relegated. That's one of my bets, plus 250. Kind of already mentioned that. You got them to finish last, though, plus 600. You just like the value there?
Or just a huge value pick here. If I was not focused on the value, I would go with the Wolves to be relegated plus 250.
Do you have the numbers up? Because I haven't been able to find to finish last odds anywhere. I was kind of looking at Sheffield United if I could find plus odds on them.
Yeah, 1 second. I think for some reason DraftKings isn't Sheffield United to finish last is plus 300 on DraftKings.
Oh, that must just be a Michigan thing. So unfortunately, I'm in Michigan, and I cannot find to finish last bets, and I cannot. That bet does not exist for me, unfortunately. But plus 300 Sheffield United is something I would consider. Just looking at their roster here, pull it back up on the screen. They're just a team. So they lost their best player, arguably the best player in Dye. He went back to his hometown club in Marseille. They just lost Sander Barge to another promoted team in Burnley. Sander Barge was a regular midfielder in their team last season. So they're just losing regulars in their team last season. And then, they added Vinicius Souza, who played for Espanyol last season. A lot of their guys were in the Premier League team a few years ago. Not really any new faces here. So it's just like, are we expecting something new from them? They're just going to play super defensive every game, try to win 1-0 kind of thing. Is that going to work with these guys? Like McBurney up front is like, he's still a thing. Like, I don't know if that's.
He's going to stack those headers one though on Fantrax. Those aerials one. He's an absolute unit up top. Can't hit the ball out of a barn, but
AW.
Yeah. No, that's a good shout. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Otherwise, for bets, so Chris also has Tottenham. Mentioned Tottenham a little bit. Top 6 at plus 100. Newcastle not top 6, plus 135. So with that bet, are you just kind of thinking just what we were talking about with these new teams going to Europe and maybe not enough depth for Newcastle to finish top 6 here?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. It's less about their roster and more about the games that they're gonna have to play. Playing in the Champions League is a big ask, and I actually really like what they've done. And Tonali was a good ad, and I still think that they have a good shot to make it. But interesting bet at plus 135.
Also off of that, you have Aston Villa to finish bottom 10 in the bottom half, plus 195.
That I feel kind of strongly about. You look at past few seasons. I mean, Leicester City was one of them. We had Wolverhampton that was like in 7th a few years ago. They dropped out. Was it Burnley who played in European competition one season, and then they dropped the next season, dropped right back in the bottom half. So there's a body of work for those teams that smaller teams that go into play in European competition and really struggle in the league the next season.
Yeah, I still like my argument is that they've actually bought players so they can actually stay here. I think that's kind of what I'm coming with, because I mean, even for a team like West Ham, who just won Europa Conference League, they're playing in Europa League. I mean, they haven't really done anything. They lost Declan Rice. They're going to add James Ward-Prowse. Okay, so James Ward-Prowse replaces Declan Rice, or if they lose Paqueta, he'll replace him, kind of thing. But I mean, they kind of have the same squad as last season. Skamaka's gone. He didn't really work out for him, but I mean, it's the same guys who, okay, maybe their XG was good last season and they didn't really perform correctly, but I'm just not sure. Like, you just have a team like West Ham who they just not putting a ton into their team, whereas Aston Villa, they're actually doing it. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with Aston Villa. So we're on opposite ends, but speaking of West Ham, I got a bunch of goal bets here. I'm going to try and go through. So speaking of West Ham, Mikel Antonio, his over/under is 7.5, and let's click through their profiles here.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's going to get a ton of time. That's the main reason I'm betting against him. So 7.5. That means 7 goals or fewer. He had 5 goals last season. Okay, I don't think he's going to get more minutes than last season because he started a bunch towards the end of the season and started throughout. Danny Ings seems like the starter over him. And then this young guy, Duvin Mubama, has been awesome in preseason. I think Mubama is actually going to get minutes over Antonio. Antonio, who arguably looked like one of Jamaica's worst Premier League players when they were in the Gold Cup earlier in the summer. So 7.5, I think that's too much for Antonio. I know he has 3 straight of 10 prior to last season's 5, but I think his best days are behind him. 33 years old. Under 7.5 goals is plus 100. What do you got?
I think you're right. I mean, that's weird.
Are you mid FPL draft right now, or what?
I am. I did have to go make a draft. I did have to go make a pick. I've been trying to handle both of these at the same time, but kind of successfully, hopefully. I would say, looking at he's under 7.5. I mean, going back to 2015, 2017, he had 3 goals, must have been hurt that year. 6 goals in 2018. Otherwise, 19 was 10 goals. 2020 was 10 goals. 2021 was 10 goals. And then last year, he just kind of fell off with the 5 goals and only 21 starts. So, yeah, I don't know. That's tough. But I think, looking at the depth chart, yeah, he will probably struggle to.
I think he's going to move to West Ham's third striker by the end of the season. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean.
And how is he going to get more than 7 goals is kind of where I'm coming from. So,
yeah, I can side with that.
All right, James Maddison under, and I'll start with some unders and I'll finish with unders or overs. James Maddison under 7.5 goals is plus 100. So you're going to look at it and be like, okay, he had 10 last season with Leicester, 12 the season before that, 8 the season before that. But okay, this is Leicester. He was their best player. He was always on the ball, taking pretty much every free kick. Is he going to be doing that for Tottenham? I mean, we'll still remains to be seen how this team is going to shape out, but it seems like Madison's going to play in more of a midfield role, and there's going to be Son, Kulusevski, maybe Kane, but Richarlison's there. So Madison's going to be the 4th best goal scorer for Tottenham. The set pieces won't be the same, or the free kicks won't be the same. So I'm just not sure the goal opportunities will be there for him. I could be completely wrong, and maybe he'll get 10 again just because he's a good player. But I'm just going off the basis of he's just not going to see the ball as much as he did at Leicester. So under 7.5 goals for James Maddison plus 100. How do you feel about James Maddison with his new club?
I'm really interested to see how many, is he on free kicks? Like, I feel like, I don't know how many sunk last year, but 1 to 2 was if you're on free kicks and you're on some of those dead ball situations, like that's kind of a big difference, I think. But yeah, I mean, you say like he was their star, which like in turn, like up, I think the way you're theorizing that is like he was their star, so he had to score their goals. But like, does like going to a Tottenham team where he has players around him that are way better, maybe Son or Harry Kane if he stays, or any of the like further quality, doesn't that mean he'll have more chances to score? I don't know. I'm interested. The under is interesting.
Possible.
I think it, set piece is a big conversation here, but yeah, I would be interested in going on the other end of that, and maybe we track back on that final podcast of the season. So I'd be willing to take the over on 7.5, in my opinion.
I have 2 I already bet on. I forgot to mention. I bet under I think it was 12.5 on Nkuku and under 11.5 on Rasmus Højlund. They are not in the show because both those bets are no longer available because both of them are injured. So I got in pretty early. It wasn't even really based off injury news, but that helped my bet a little bit. We're gonna question about our guy Ian here is asking about Darwin. So you're the Liverpool guy. I don't know. I can't actually find over-unders for Darwin Nunez. So there's not a ton here, but he's plus 1,800 to be the top goal scorer, which is 7th best, tied with Gabriel Jesus for goal scoring odds. Just in terms, I guess, who do you think is going to be the second highest scorer for Liverpool this season behind Salah? Or is someone going to finish above Salah?
Gakpo.
Gakpo?
I think it's going to be Gakpo. Or, I mean, him or Diaz. Gakpo just like playing in that role. He's going to be the vocal point. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, 10 goals and like 7 assists type of season for him. He's just going to play like more of that Bobby Firmino role.
Are you like a Darwin hater?
No, frankly, I had this dumb tweet last year. I was like, I think it was early in the season, like watch Darwin score more goals than Erling Haaland. So like hand up on that one, but I think he'll be way better this season.
Yeah.
I just think at this point, we saw all last season, Klopp was like, this guy doesn't have the discipline to play in our system, basically is why he wasn't getting those starts. And, they've got 4 attackers in Jota, Salah, Gakpo, and Diaz who just seem preferred to him. So I think it'll be tough for him to break into the Premier League starting 11. But yeah, I don't know. I hope he's such a raw, talented forward. I just haven't seen that final finish polished option that we really need to see. I wonder what we can find on the over under for him, because that would be an interesting bet.
Yeah, he so top goals in the league. Darwin is plus 1,800. Gakpo is plus 3,500. Jota is plus 5,000, and Luis Diaz is plus 6,500. So the books favor Darwin getting the second most goals for Liverpool there.
I would have him as my 4th most goals, but I don't know. Maybe just given that he's going to play that top target man when he does play.
Yeah, if we had like an over under for all of these, that would be nice, but I don't believe we do. So Luis Diaz is 7.5, which I think is kind of intriguing to take the over on if you think he's going to get the minutes, because Liverpool will score goals. So if Luis Diaz is a regular starter, you got to think he's getting more than 7 goals. I kind of like that one.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, Szoboszlai is at 6.5, and Diaz only 1 more goal than Szoboszlai is slightly surprising given that the positions they play. Gakpo is 9.5 and Jota is 7.5. So, all right, another bet here. Let's look at João Pedro is. I took 2 Brighton guys, so I'll just do João Pedro under 8.5 goals, and Mitoma over 7.5 goals. This one is kind of surprising, and I mean, maybe João Pedro is going to come into Brighton and just, I don't know, start every game, start 38 matches, take every PK, take PKs over Gross, but I don't think that's going to happen. So why is he at 8.5 goals? So I got under 8.5 goals for Pedro, and then Mitoma. So Mitoma scored 7 goals last season. And this includes, he scored 0 goals in the final 12 matches last season, despite having quite a few opportunities. If you watch Brighton at all, he had a lot of chances late in the season, but he only had 12 goals in the final, he had 0 goals in the final 12 matches. And so his 7 goals overall includes that he only started 2 matches before the World Cup. I mean, we easily forget these things, but Mitoma was not a regular starter at the beginning of the season for Brighton because of positions and who was it? Someone got injured that had some Liverpool guy that was getting starts got injured. But anyways, so over 7.5 goals for Mitoma. I don't know why his over-under is lower than Pedro's, but I'll take that for me here. For Brighton here, what are your thoughts here on Brighton's situation in general? I know Mitoma's been in rumors for Manchester City, but you can't really put that into the odds here. So go ahead.
Do we mention Evan Ferguson? Like, I feel like, I mean, he's
Not
all over.
really.
I mean, when we were I just did
His
FPL draft and a Fantrax draft, and like you look at the RotoWire rankings that we have here, and he's like, in the top 10 of forwards to take. Sounds like he's going to get a ton of minutes up top, and yeah, I think that affects João Pedro's goals for sure, because I don't think is he the preferred option up there.
I mean, Pedro will probably be in like that attacking midfield position or on the wing. I don't think he's going to play as that lone striker. I think that's the Ferguson, Danny Welbeck role, really.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think I'd under him 4, because when we've seen João Pedro in the Premier League, like it wasn't that pretty. Like it wasn't. I mean,
I
maybe, and
mean,
obviously,
he
I'll
was
give him.
18 and 19. I'll say that.
Yeah, right. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he was young, and he's maybe developed a bit more over the past season or two. But 9 goals is like, it's not like it's easy to go get 9 goals out here. So I'm fine with that under.
All right, my final one before we get to your couple. Miguel Almiron over 5.5 goals. He had 11 goals last season in 2,500 minutes. That includes, so like he missed about a month of action because of injury. I guess the thought is that he's not going to get consistent starts anymore. That Harvey Barnes is coming in, even though Harvey Barnes on the left side. Maybe Barnes and Gordon, and maybe they're going to start Isak and Wilson at the same time. Maybe that's going to mean less time for Almiron, that kind of a thing. But I still think Almiron is the preferred option on the right wing. And 5.5 goals for what some think is a top 6 side. Does odds seem off? He scored 11 last season. So, I'll take that. That's minus 110. All these odds, by the way, I didn't take any of the minus 150s. These are all plus 100 or minus 110. But what do you think about Almiron here?
Yeah, I mean, did Wilson ended up being the top goal scorer for Newcastle last year? I think.
Yeah, he might have had like 18, I think.
I think, well, I want to say less than that, but at least maybe in all competitions it was
He had
18.
18 in the Premier League.
Oh wow.
He scored like 7 in the final 7 matches.
He had like 2 in that match. I forget who they're playing, where he's like right at the end there. But interesting. That's a good haul for him. Yeah, I mean, Miggy was scoring he scored like 5 games, or like it felt like 5 games in a row there to begin the season. Really got him off to the races. But yeah, I think over 6 goals he doubled that nearly last year. So yeah, I'm cool with that as well. And it seems like I have like a Newcastle crush across all fantasy leagues, I'm pretty sure. So
Outside of your actual bets.
yeah, exactly. So outside of my bets, I really like them.
All right, we'll close this off with some title talk here. So you got Manchester. Oh, you took this bet last year. I think, did you figure out what it was? I think it was plus 400 maybe. Manchester
I was
City.
trying to dig into this before we did this, but I didn't figure this out. But
I think it was
it was Man City to win the title and Haaland to be the top goal scorer. It had to. We'd mentioned it in our last podcast last season too, but it's plus 130, and it seems like good as goal. It had to have been at least plus 200 last year, if not more, and that hit.
Yeah, so.
But I mean, look no further than what we saw: 36 goals, and
it was plus 450. I just looked it up.
Wow, plus 450.
Down to plus 130. Whew.
Yeah, which feels crazy, but that's what happens when you bang in 36 goals.
All right, your other bet is Arsenal winner without Manchester City. So that means if you remove Manchester City from the equation, Arsenal will be first, or will beat everyone else, kind of a thing. Second place, basically. Yeah, that's plus 160.
These are like my comfort zone bets. Those two are my comfort zone bets because I feel pretty confident in them. I hope I'm wrong, just from a fan perspective. But City to win and Haaland to score the most goals, that would just, unless he like misses 4 months of the season, I don't see that bet missing. And then, no Man City in it. Arsenal look prime. They've got the addition of the great, some really solid players, and they took City, somewhat to the brink last year. And I think, why not? Why can't they do it again with more investment in the squad?
There you go. There you go. Those are our bets. Those are our future bets for the Premier League 2023-24 season. Chris, do you have anything else? We got to make this under an hour here.
Under an hour, yeah. I mean, no, not really. We come Friday, noontime out here Pacific. I'll have that game going on in the background, and then we got some really. We'll do our podcast for the weekend here tomorrow, but we have some really good games. Chelsea, Liverpool coming up too. But yeah, I mean it's that time of the year when you're pumped up about your FPL team, you're pumped up about your Fantrax team. Your team hasn't shipped 4 goals away to Wolverhampton yet. It's a beautiful time of the year. Get the pot of coffee going early on Saturday. Get ready. Maybe go out and get a couple bakery items and just pop yourself on the couch and make it happen. Maybe get a quick a morning beer going. I don't know, whatever you got to do.
Morning beer with the pot of coffee, with the bakery run.
All
That's
the
a busy
liquids,
morning.
all the liquids. But yeah, I can't. I'm quite excited, and I know you are, and I know probably a lot of the listeners are as well.
There we go. All right, Chris, you can find him at CHROwen8 on Twitter. I am at RotoZdroik. You can also follow RotoWire Soccer at RotoWire Soccer. Again, I was using our cheat sheet throughout this show for the lineups, but to get that, you need access to RotoWire. You need a subscription. That's rotowire.com/soccer trial to get you a 48-hour trial. So check that out. We got this FPL cheat sheet up. This is helpful. We're also going to have, I don't know if I'm spoiling this here, but we're going to have a new optimizer coming out shortly. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, but a new optimizer is coming out. And you're going to be able to set your FPL team with it. We're still working out some kinks here, but you're going to be able to set your FPL team, create your FPL team with our optimizer. So hopefully we can get that going here, but rotowire.com/soccer trial. You'll need a subscription to get access to the optimizer. But Chris, thank you for the show. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see everyone for tomorrow. The next day, we're going to have a few shows for a couple of our bets. But thank you for watching Kits and Wagers. Chris, have a good night, and let's win these futures bets.
Thanks, Adam. Cheers.